Eleanor Morrison sat in the back of the dusty wagon and watched the trees disappear behind her. Boston was gone now. Everything she knew was gone. Her father had died 3 months ago, and with him went any safety she had in this world. She was 22 years old and alone. Her mother had died when she was young, so it was just her and her father for many years. He was a kind man who worked in a bookshop. He taught her to read and write, which was more than most girls got. But when fever took him, Eleanor had nothing. No money, no home, no family except her uncle. Uncle George was not a kind man. He looked at Eleanor like she was a problem he needed to solve. Within a week of the funeral, he told her his plan. There was a rancher in the New Mexico territory who needed a wife. His name was Marcus Thornton. He was rich and owned a lot of land. He sent money for a bride, and Uncle George was happy to take it. Eleanor begged him not to do this. She said she could work, that she could find a job in Boston, but Uncle George just laughed. "What job?" he asked. "You think someone will hire you? A woman with no references and no skills? You should be grateful Mr. Thornton wants you at all." So here she was, sitting in a wagon, heading west with strangers. There were 3 other wagons in their group. 2 were driven by men who worked for Thornton. They were rough men who barely spoke. The 3rd wagon carried supplies. A woman named Mrs. Hadley was supposed to watch over Eleanor during the journey, but she mostly ignored her. Eleanor had heard stories about New Mexico. It was wild land where Indians lived. People said it was dangerous. They said the Apache would kill settlers and burn their homes. Eleanor was scared, but what choice did she have? She was already sold. The money was paid. She belonged to Marcus Thornton now, even though she had never met him. The journey took weeks. They traveled through forests and across plains. The land got drier as they went west. Trees became scarce. The sun beat down hard during the day and the nights were cold. Eleanor's skin burned and her lips cracked. She had never been so uncomfortable in her life. Mrs. Hadley told her a little about Marcus Thornton. He owned a big ranch with many cattle. He was in his 50s, much older than Eleanor. His first wife died years ago and he wanted a new one to run his house. "You'll have servants," Mrs. Hadley said. "It won't be so bad. Just do what he says and keep quiet." Eleanor felt sick when she heard this. She didn't want to marry this man. She didn't want to be someone who had to keep quiet and obey. But what else could she do? Run away? Where would she go in this empty land? They were 3 days from Thornton's ranch when it happened. The wagons were moving through a narrow canyon. Red rocks rose up on both sides of them. It was late afternoon and the shadows were getting long. Eleanor was half asleep from the heat when she heard the first shout. The driver of her wagon pulled hard on the reins. The horses stopped so fast that Eleanor almost fell forward. She grabbed the side of the wagon and looked around. Men were appearing on the rocks above them. They had weapons. Some had rifles, others had bows. "Apache," one of Thornton's men shouted. He reached for his gun. Everything happened very fast after that. Thornton's men started shooting. The sound was so loud that Eleanor covered her ears. The Apache men on the rocks didn't shoot back right away. They seemed to be calling out in their own language. But Thornton's men kept firing. One of the Apache warriors raised his rifle and fired a warning shot into the air. Then more shots came. The horses got scared and started to run. Eleanor's wagon jerked forward. She grabbed onto the side again, but the wagon hit a rock and tilted hard to the left. Eleanor felt herself falling. She tried to hold on but couldn't. The world spun around her. She hit the ground hard and felt pain shoot through her shoulder. The wagon kept moving without her. She could hear shouting and gunfire, but it sounded far away now. She tried to get up, but her head was spinning. Everything looked blurry. She could see the canyon wall nearby. She crawled toward it, trying to hide. Her dress caught on rocks and tore. Her hands were bleeding, but she kept moving. The sounds of fighting continued. Eleanor pressed herself against the canyon wall and tried to stay quiet. She was shaking. She couldn't think clearly. The sun was so bright that it hurt her eyes. Then she heard footsteps. Someone was coming. Eleanor tried to make herself smaller against the rocks. She looked up and saw a man standing over her. He was Apache. He was tall and wore leather clothing. His long black hair was tied back. He had a rifle in his hands, but he wasn't pointing it at her. Their eyes met. Eleanor waited for him to kill her. That's what everyone said the Apache did, but he just stood there looking at her with dark, serious eyes. He said something in his language. Eleanor didn't understand. She shook her head. The man looked around, then looked back at her. He seemed to be thinking about something. Behind him, Eleanor could hear the other Apache men calling out. The fighting seemed to be over. She heard horses but couldn't see the wagons anymore. The Apache man leaned down and looked at Eleanor's shoulder. She realized she was bleeding more than she thought. The whole side of her dress was red now. She felt dizzy and sick. The world started to spin again. The man said something else in his language. His voice was deep but not angry. He put his rifle on his back and reached toward her. Eleanor tried to move away, but she was too weak. The last thing she remembered was the feeling of strong arms lifting her up. Then everything went black. When Eleanor woke up later, she wasn't in the canyon anymore. She was lying on something soft. She could hear voices speaking in a language she didn't know. She tried to open her eyes, but they felt so heavy. Her whole body hurt. She tried to remember what happened, but her mind was foggy. She heard a woman's voice, old and gentle. She felt cool water on her forehead. Someone was taking care of her. But where was she? What happened to the wagons? What happened to Mrs. Hadley and Thornton's men? Eleanor tried to ask these questions, but no words came out. She was so tired. The darkness pulled her back down, and she let it take her. Somewhere in that darkness, she dreamed of dark eyes watching her. She dreamed of being carried through the canyon. She dreamed of a voice speaking words she couldn't understand, but somehow made her feel less afraid. She didn't know it yet, but her life had just changed completely. The path her uncle chose for her was gone. A new path was starting, one that would lead her somewhere she never expected to go. Eleanor opened her eyes slowly. Everything looked strange. She was lying on soft furs inside some kind of shelter. The walls were made of animal skins stretched over wooden poles. Sunlight came through small gaps, making patterns on the ground. She could hear voices outside speaking in that language she didn't understand. Her shoulder hurt badly. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her body. A sound escaped her lips, and immediately the shelter's opening moved. An old woman came inside. She had long gray hair in 2 braids and deep wrinkles around her kind eyes. She wore a leather dress with beautiful beads on it. The old woman smiled at Eleanor and said something gentle. Then she came closer and put her hand on Eleanor's forehead. Her touch was cool and soft. She said more words and shook her head. Eleanor understood the meaning, even without knowing the language. The woman was telling her to stay down and rest. Eleanor's mind was full of questions. Where was she? How long had she been here? What happened to the wagon train? But she was too weak to ask. The old woman brought a bowl of water and helped Eleanor drink. The water was cool and tasted good. Then she brought some kind of soup with meat and vegetables. Eleanor didn't know what it was, but she was so hungry that she ate it all. Over the next few days, Eleanor drifted in and out of sleep. The old woman was always there when she woke up. She changed the bandages on Eleanor's shoulder and gave her medicine that tasted bitter. Sometimes other women would come to look at Eleanor. They spoke quietly among themselves, but never seemed angry or mean. They just seemed curious. On the 4th day, Eleanor felt strong enough to sit up. The old woman smiled when she saw this and brought her more soup. While Eleanor ate, she looked around the shelter more carefully. Everything was neat and organized. There were baskets with food and supplies. Beautiful blankets were folded in one corner. Tools and pots were arranged carefully along the walls. That afternoon, the old woman helped Eleanor stand up. Her legs felt weak, but she could walk. The woman supported her and took her outside for the first time. Eleanor blinked in the bright sunlight. When her eyes adjusted, she saw that she was in a camp with many shelters like the one she was in. People were moving around doing different work. Children were playing. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Eleanor also saw him. The man from the canyon. He was standing with a group of other men, and they seemed to be discussing something serious. He was taller than the others. He wore leather pants and a shirt. His long black hair was loose now, falling past his shoulders. He looked strong and confident. When he turned and saw Eleanor, he stopped talking. Their eyes met across the camp. Eleanor felt her heart beat faster. This man had carried her here when he could have left her to die. But why? She didn't understand. The old woman said something and pulled Eleanor's attention away. She guided her to sit near a fire where other women were working. The women were doing different tasks. Some were sewing leather. Others were preparing food. One young woman was making a basket. They all looked at Eleanor with interest. The old woman said something and pointed at Eleanor, then pointed at herself and said a word. Kaya, Eleanor understood. The old woman's name was Kaya. Eleanor pointed at herself. Eleanor, she said. Kaya smiled and repeated it. Eleanor. The other women tried to say it too. They laughed when they got it wrong. It wasn't mean laughter. They seemed friendly. Eleanor felt a little less scared. Over the next week, Eleanor got stronger. Kaya taught her simple words in their language. Eleanor learned that these people were Apache. She learned the words for water, food, sun, moon, and thank you. The Apache women seemed happy when she tried to speak their language, even when she made mistakes. Eleanor watched how the camp worked. Everyone had jobs to do. The men hunted and protected the camp. The women cooked, made clothes, gathered plants, and took care of children. But it wasn't like Boston where everything was strict and formal. People laughed and talked freely. Children ran around playing. There was hard work but also joy. She also noticed the tall man, though she tried not to stare. Kaya told her his name one day. Dakota, she said, and then spoke more words in Apache that Eleanor didn't understand. But from the way Kaya said it and how others treated him, Eleanor could tell he was important. He was a leader. Dakota often looked at Eleanor when he thought she wasn't watching, but whenever she caught him looking, he would turn away. He never came close to her. He seemed to be keeping his distance on purpose. Eleanor wondered why. Was he afraid of her? That seemed silly. She was the one who should be afraid. One evening, Kaya took Eleanor to gather plants near the camp. The old woman showed her different leaves and roots. She used simple words and hand signals to explain what each plant was for. This one helped with pain. That one was good for cooking. Another one could heal wounds. Eleanor tried to remember everything. As they were walking back, Dakota appeared on the path. He was alone this time. He and Kaya spoke in their language. Kaya nodded several times, then said something that made Dakota look uncomfortable. Eleanor wished she knew what they were saying. Then Dakota looked at Eleanor. He said something in Apache, then tried again in broken Spanish. ¿Cómo está? Eleanor knew a little Spanish from books. Bien, she answered. Gracias, Dakota nodded. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. In slow Spanish, he asked if Kaya was taking good care of her. Eleanor said yes. She wanted to ask him so many questions, but her Spanish wasn't good enough. She wanted to know why he saved her. She wanted to know what happened to the wagon train. She wanted to know what would happen to her now. Dakota seemed to understand her confusion. He spoke more Spanish slowly so she could understand. He told her that she was hurt badly. He brought her here so Kaya could heal her. He said she was safe. No one would hurt her here. But why? Eleanor asked in Spanish. Why help me? Dakota was quiet for a moment. Then he said something Eleanor didn't expect. In careful Spanish, he said, you were afraid. But you did not shoot. You did not hate. You were just afraid. Eleanor thought about that moment in the canyon. She had been terrified, yes. But she hadn't felt hate. She was just a person who was scared and hurt. Maybe Dakota saw that. Maybe that's why he helped her. The days turned into weeks. Eleanor learned more of the Apache language. She helped the women with their work. She learned to prepare food the Apache way. She learned which plants were safe to eat and which ones were medicine. Kaya was patient with her and taught her many things. Eleanor also learned that there was trouble between the Apache and the white settlers. She heard the men talking about a rancher who was taking their land. When she heard the name Thornton, she felt cold all over. That was the man she was supposed to marry. Kaya noticed her reaction and asked what was wrong. Using the words she knew and many hand gestures, Eleanor tried to explain. She told Kaya about her father dying and her uncle selling her. She told her about Marcus Thornton and the wagon train. Kaya listened with sad eyes. She seemed to understand that Eleanor didn't choose to come here. She was forced, just like Kaya's people were being forced from their land. That night, Kaya took Eleanor to where Dakota was sitting by a fire. She spoke to him in Apache and Eleanor heard her own name. Dakota listened carefully. He asked Kaya questions. Then he looked at Eleanor for a long time. Finally, he spoke. He used Apache, Spanish, and hand signs to make her understand. He told her that Marcus Thornton was a bad man. He was stealing Apache land and lying about it. He wanted to drive the Apache away so he could take everything. The wagon train was bringing more men and guns to help him do this. Eleanor felt sick. She was supposed to marry this man. She was supposed to help him, to be part of his household. She would have been living in a house built on stolen land, surrounded by people who hurt others for money. Dakota asked her a question in Spanish. Did she want to go back to Thornton? Did she want them to take her to the white settlements? Eleanor thought about her answer. She could go back. She could find her way to a town and try to make a life there. But what kind of life? She had no money and no family. She would probably end up exactly where she started, sold to another man like property. Or she could stay here at least for a while. These people had been kind to her. They had saved her life. They taught her things and treated her with respect. She felt more free here than she ever had in Boston with her uncle. No, Eleanor said in Spanish. I want to stay. Dakota nodded slowly. He said something to Kaya and the old woman smiled. Then Dakota stood up. He looked down at Eleanor with those dark, serious eyes. In Spanish, he said, "Then you stay. You are safe here." As he walked away, Eleanor felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. For the first time in months, she felt hope. Maybe her life didn't have to be what other people decided. Maybe she could choose for herself. And right now, she chose to stay. 2 months passed since Eleanor arrived at the Apache camp. She could now speak enough of their language to have simple conversations. She understood their daily routines and helped with the work. The women treated her like one of them. The children had stopped being shy and would run up to her with questions and games. She felt like she belonged somewhere for the first time since her father died. Eleanor also spent more time with Dakota, though neither of them planned it. He would be teaching the young men to track animals, and she would be gathering plants nearby. He would be discussing plans with the elders, and she would be helping prepare their meal. They would look at each other across the camp and quickly look away. But the looks became longer each time. One afternoon, Dakota came to where Eleanor was helping Kaya dry herbs. He spoke in Apache, then switched to Spanish when he saw Eleanor's confused face. He asked if she wanted to learn about the land. He said it was important to know where things were if she was going to stay here. Eleanor agreed. She told Kaya she would be back later. Then she walked with Dakota away from the camp. It felt strange to be alone with him. Her heart was beating fast, but she tried to act calm. Dakota took her to a hill that overlooked the valley. From there, she could see far in every direction. He pointed out different landmarks and told her their names in Apache. He showed her where water could be found. He explained which plants were safe and which were dangerous. He talked about the animals that lived here and how to watch for signs of them. But then his voice changed. He became serious. He pointed toward the south and said a word that Eleanor had learned meant trouble. He told her that Thornton's ranch was there. He said more men were coming. They were taking more land. They were building fences and keeping the Apache away from places they had used for generations. My people have lived here forever, Dakota said in careful Spanish. This is our home. But the white men say it belongs to them now. They have papers that say so, papers we never signed. Eleanor listened carefully. In Boston, she had heard that the West was empty land waiting to be settled. But it wasn't empty. People lived here. They had lives and homes and families. They just lived differently than white people did. What will you do? Eleanor asked. Dakota looked at her with tired eyes. I don't know, he admitted. If we fight, more soldiers will come. They have more guns and more men. But if we don't fight, we lose everything. We become like the tribes in the East that were forced to move far away from their homes. Eleanor felt his pain. She understood what it meant to be powerless, to have others control your life. There must be another way, she said. What way? Dakota asked. You know the white people. What way do they respect besides force? Eleanor thought about this. Some white people respect the law, she said slowly. If you have proof that Thornton is breaking the law, maybe you can stop him that way. Dakota shook his head. The law is made by white men for white men. It does not protect us. Some laws do, Eleanor insisted. I read about treaties. The government makes agreements with tribes. If Thornton is breaking those agreements, that's against the law even for white people. Dakota looked at her with new interest. You can read and write? Yes, Eleanor said. My father taught me. I read many books. For the first time since she met him, Dakota smiled. It changed his whole face. He looked younger and less worried. Maybe you can help us, he said. Maybe there is another way. They talked for a long time on that hill. Dakota told her about the agreements his people had with the government. He told her about the lands that were supposed to be protected. Eleanor listened and tried to remember everything. She wanted to help. These people had saved her and accepted her. They deserved to keep their home. When they walked back to camp, something had changed between them. They weren't strangers anymore. They were friends working toward the same goal. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor began writing down everything she learned. Dakota brought her to meet the elders. Through careful translation, they told her their stories. They explained where their people had lived and traveled. They showed her the areas that Thornton was now claiming as his own. Eleanor wrote it all down in English, making careful notes about dates and places. She also started drawing maps. She marked the places the Apache had always used. She marked where Thornton's fences were going up. She marked where his men had chased Apache families away from water sources. The evidence started to pile up. But working together also meant spending more time together. Eleanor and Dakota would sit by the fire late at night, going over documents and maps. Sometimes they would just talk about other things. Dakota told her about his life, about learning to hunt as a boy, about the responsibility of being a leader. Eleanor told him about Boston, about her father's bookshop, about the smell of the ocean. One night, Dakota taught her some words in his language that she didn't know yet. He spoke them slowly, and she repeated them. When she got one wrong, he laughed. His laugh was warm and rich. It made Eleanor smile. "You laugh like you don't do it often enough," she said. Dakota's smile faded a little. "There is not much to laugh about these days." "Then we should laugh when we can," Eleanor said. "My father used to say that joy is important, especially in hard times." "Your father was wise," Dakota said. He looked at her in the firelight. "You miss him." "Every day," Eleanor admitted. "But I think he would be happy that I'm here. He always wanted me to choose my own path. He didn't like how women were treated, how they had to obey men and couldn't make their own decisions. Here, women have power," Dakota said. "They choose their husbands. They can divorce them if they are bad husbands. They own their own property. My grandmother Kaya is one of our most respected elders. People listen to her advice." Eleanor thought about this. The Apache way seemed more fair in many ways than the white world she came from. Women here had rights that women in Boston could only dream about. "Dakota," Eleanor said carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Yes, that day in the canyon. Why did you save me? You could have left me there." Dakota was quiet for a moment. He looked into the fire. "I saw your face," he finally said. "You were not like the men with guns. You were afraid, but also—" He struggled to find the right words in Spanish. "Also innocent. You did not choose to be there. And I thought, if I leave you to die, how am I different from them? They kill without thought. I did not want to be like that." Eleanor felt tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You gave me my life back. More than that. You gave me freedom." Dakota looked at her. The firelight made shadows on his face. He reached out slowly and touched her hand. It was the first time he had touched her since that day he carried her from the canyon. His hand was warm and calloused from work. "You are brave, Eleanor," he said. "Coming to a place so different from your home. Learning new ways. Helping people who are not your people." "They are my people now," Eleanor said. "You are my people." The words hung in the air between them. Dakota didn't let go of her hand. They sat there in the quiet night, the fire burning low, their hands touching. Neither of them spoke about what was happening, but both of them felt it. Over the next few days, others in the camp noticed the change. Kaya smiled knowingly when she saw Eleanor and Dakota talking. The other women whispered and giggled, but no one seemed angry about it. If anything, they seemed happy. Then everything changed. A young Apache man rode into camp one evening, his horse covered in dust. He had urgent news. Thornton had posted notices in town. He was offering a reward for information about Eleanor. He claimed she had been kidnapped by savages. He was using her disappearance to get more soldiers to come to the territory. He was planning a big attack on Apache camps. The camp became tense. The men gathered to discuss what to do. Some thought they should hide Eleanor better. Others thought they should take her to a town far from Thornton's reach. A few even suggested they should leave their camp and move deeper into the mountains. But Eleanor knew what she had to do. That night, she spoke to the Council of Elders with Dakota translating. She told them she could prove that Thornton was lying. She had all the evidence written down. If she could get it to the right authorities, to honest lawmen, Thornton might be stopped before anyone else got hurt. But you would have to go to the white settlements. one elder said. You would have to face Thornton. I know, Eleanor said. But this is partly my fault. He's using me as an excuse to hurt you. I have to make it right. Dakota spoke up. I will go with her. I will protect her. No, another elder said. If you go to the white settlements, they will arrest you or kill you. You are Apache. Then what do we do? Dakota asked, his voice rising with frustration. Let them destroy us? Let them take everything? The council argued late into the night. Finally, Kaya spoke. The old woman's voice was strong despite her age. She said that Eleanor was right. The evidence might work. But Eleanor shouldn't go alone. She should go with Dakota, but they should go secretly. They should take the documents to someone who might listen, someone who valued the law more than money. It was decided. Eleanor and Dakota would leave in 3 days. They would travel to the territorial capital where there were federal marshals. It was risky, but it was the best chance they had. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. Eleanor and Dakota left the camp before dawn. They traveled on horseback, taking paths that avoided the main trails. Eleanor had never ridden so much before. Her legs hurt and her back ached, but she didn't complain. This was too important. They moved carefully through the land. Dakota knew every hill and valley. He knew where to find water and where to hide if they saw other people. Eleanor carried the documents wrapped in leather to keep them safe. Everything she had written, every map she had drawn, every piece of evidence they had collected was in that bundle. On the 3rd night of their journey, they made camp in a small canyon. Dakota built a tiny fire for warmth. They ate dried meat and the bread that Kaya had packed for them. The stars were bright overhead. Tomorrow we will reach the edge of the settlements, Dakota said. After that it becomes more dangerous. Because people will see you, Eleanor said. Yes. Apache are not welcome in white towns. Eleanor looked at him in the firelight. She thought about how brave he was to do this. He was risking his life to save his people. Maybe I should go alone from here, she said. You could wait in the hills. No, Dakota said firmly. We go together. I made a promise to protect you. But Dakota, no, Eleanor. He reached for her hand. We go together. They sat in silence for a while. Then Dakota spoke quietly. When I first saw you in the canyon, I thought you were like all the other white settlers. I thought you would hate me because I am Apache. But you are different. You see people not just what they look like. You're different too, Eleanor said. You could have hated all white people after everything they've done to your tribe. But you saved me anyway. Maybe that is why we understand each other, Dakota said. We both know what it is to be judged for things we cannot control. That night they slept close to each other for warmth. Eleanor felt safe next to Dakota, even though danger was all around them. The next day they could see buildings in the distance. The territorial capital was bigger than Eleanor expected. There were proper streets and many houses. They waited until evening before getting closer. Dakota found a place to hide the horses outside of town. I will cover my hair, he said, wrapping a cloth around his head. And I will not speak. If anyone asks, you tell them I am your servant who does not speak English. Eleanor hated the idea of pretending Dakota was her servant, but she knew it was necessary. They walked into town as the sun was setting. People looked at them, but no one stopped them. Eleanor asked a woman where she could find the federal marshal's office. The woman gave her directions, but looked suspicious. The marshal's office was in a stone building near the center of town. Eleanor took a deep breath and opened the door. Inside, a man sat at a desk writing something. He looked up when they entered. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and tired eyes. Help you? He asked. Are you the federal marshal? Eleanor asked. Deputy Marshal James Wheeler, the man said. The marshal is away. What's this about? Eleanor's heart sank a little. She had hoped to speak to the marshal himself. But she had come this far. My name is Eleanor Morrison. I have evidence of crimes being committed against the Apache people. Land theft, fraud, and illegal intimidation. Wheeler's eyebrows went up. He looked at Dakota, then back at Eleanor. That's a serious accusation, miss. You got proof? Eleanor put the bundle of documents on his desk. Everything is here. Maps, testimonies, dates, and locations. A man named Marcus Thornton is illegally seizing Apache land and using false claims to get military support. Wheeler opened the bundle and started reading. His expression changed as he looked through the papers. He studied the maps carefully. He read the testimonies Eleanor had written down. Minutes passed in silence. Finally, he looked up. "Where did you get all this?" "I collected it," Eleanor said. "I spoke to the Apache elders. I documented everything they told me." "You speak Apache?" "Enough," Eleanor said. Wheeler looked at Dakota again, this time with more interest. "And who's this?" Eleanor hesitated. She didn't want to lie, but she was afraid of what might happen if she told the truth. But then Dakota stepped forward. He unwrapped the cloth from his head, letting his long black hair fall free. "I am Dakota," he said in careful English, "leader of my band. Everything in those papers is true." Wheeler stood up slowly. His hand moved toward the gun on his belt. Eleanor's heart raced. Had they made a terrible mistake? But Wheeler didn't draw his gun. Instead, he looked thoughtful. "You came here knowing you could be arrested or shot?" "Yes," Dakota said simply. "Because the truth must be told." Wheeler sat back down. He looked at the documents again, then at them. "I've heard rumors about Thornton. Had a few complaints from ranchers saying he's been muscling in on their land too, but nothing I could prove. This, though," he tapped the papers. "This is detailed. This is good work. Will you investigate?" Eleanor asked. "I need to," Wheeler said. "If even half of this is true, Thornton's committed serious federal crimes. But miss, I have to ask. Thornton posted a reward for you. Said you were kidnapped. What's the real story?" Eleanor took a deep breath and told him everything. She told him about her uncle selling her, about the wagon train, about being rescued by Dakota. She told him about living with the Apache and learning their ways. She told him why she decided to help them. Wheeler listened to it all without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "That's quite a tale," he said. "But I believe you. I've met Marcus Thornton. He's the kind of man who would buy a woman like property." "What happens now?" Eleanor asked. "Now I need to verify some of this information," Wheeler said. "That might take a few days. You two should stay in town but keep out of sight. Thornton has men everywhere. Where can we stay?" Eleanor asked. "We don't have much money." Wheeler thought for a moment. "My sister runs a boarding house on the edge of town. She's a good woman. She won't ask too many questions. I'll send word to her that you're coming." He wrote a quick note and gave it to Eleanor. Then he looked at Dakota. "You're taking a big risk being here. Why do this? Why not just fight?" "Fighting will kill my people," Dakota said. "We are not enough. We need the law to protect us if the law is just." "The law tries to be just," Wheeler said, "but it doesn't always succeed. Still, I'll do my best." They left the office as darkness fell over the town. Eleanor felt a small hope growing in her chest. Maybe this would work. Maybe they could stop Thornton without more bloodshed. But as they walked toward the boarding house, Eleanor heard a voice that made her blood run cold. Well, if it isn't my missing bride." She turned and saw Marcus Thornton standing in the street. He was a large man with cold eyes and a cruel smile. Behind him stood several armed men. "Mr. Thornton," Eleanor said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've been looking for you, my dear," Thornton said, worried sick. "And I see you've been keeping company with savages." His eyes moved to Dakota with pure hatred. "I'm not your bride," Eleanor said. "I never agreed to marry you." "Your uncle made that agreement," Thornton said. "And I paid good money. You belong to me. People don't belong to other people," Eleanor said firmly. Thornton laughed. It was not a nice sound. "You've gone native, haven't you? Forgotten your place. But don't worry. I'll remind you once we get you home." He gestured to his men. They started to move toward Eleanor and Dakota. Dakota put his hand on his knife, but they were badly outnumbered. Eleanor's mind raced. What could they do? Then a voice rang out. "That's far enough, Thornton." Deputy Marshal Wheeler stepped out of the shadows. His gun was drawn. Behind him came 3 more men wearing badges. They formed a line between Thornton's group and Eleanor and Dakota. "This is federal business now," Wheeler said. "You and your men need to back off." Thornton's face turned red with anger. "Federal business? This is about my property. That woman was sold to me." "That woman is a free person," Wheeler said. "And you're under investigation for land fraud and illegal seizure of territory. I suggest you come to my office tomorrow morning to answer some questions. If you don't, I'll issue a warrant for your arrest." "You can't do this," Thornton shouted. "I have friends. I have connections." "Maybe you do," Wheeler said. "But I have jurisdiction and evidence. Now move along before I arrest you for threatening a federal witness." Thornton looked like he wanted to fight. His men had their hands on their guns. For a long moment, everyone stood frozen. Then a judge who had been watching from nearby stepped forward. "I heard everything, Thornton," the judge said, "and I advise you to leave now." "The deputy marshal is within his rights." Thornton's jaw clenched. He looked at Eleanor with fury in his eyes. "This isn't over," he said. Then he turned and walked away, his men following. Eleanor felt her knees go weak. Dakota caught her arm to steady her. Wheeler holstered his gun and came over to them. "You two all right?" he asked. "Yes," Eleanor said. "Thank you." "Thank me when this is really over," Wheeler said. "Thornton's dangerous. He's not going to give up easy. You both need to be very careful." That night at the boarding house, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. They had made progress, but Thornton was still out there. And he was angry. Dakota was in the room next to hers. She heard him moving around, unable to sleep either. Eleanor got up and quietly opened her door. She knocked softly on his door. Dakota opened it. He looked surprised to see her. The next 3 days were tense. Deputy Marshal Wheeler worked quickly to verify Eleanor's evidence. He sent telegrams to government offices. He interviewed other ranchers who had problems with Thornton. He checked land records and found many discrepancies. Everything Eleanor documented was proving to be true, but Thornton wasn't sitting idle. His men were seen all over town watching and waiting. Twice they tried to approach the boarding house, but Wheeler had posted guards. The whole town buzzed with rumors about what was happening. On the fourth day, something happened that changed everything. A federal marshal arrived from the capital with a team of investigators. He had been looking into Thornton for months after receiving complaints about his business practices. Eleanor's evidence was exactly what he needed to build a case. The marshal's name was Samuel Harrison. He was a serious man who took his job very seriously. He spent hours reviewing all of Eleanor's documents. He asked her detailed questions about how she collected the information. He even spoke with Dakota through an interpreter to confirm the testimonies. "This is excellent work, Miss Morrison," Harrison said. "Very thorough. With this evidence, we can charge Thornton with multiple federal crimes: land fraud, illegal intimidation, falsifying documents, and violation of treaty agreements." "What will happen to him?" Eleanor asked. "If convicted, he'll lose everything. His land claims will be voided. He'll face prison time, and the lands will be returned to their rightful owners, including the Apache territories." Eleanor felt relief wash over her. Finally, justice might be done, but Harrison looked serious. "However, I need to warn you, Thornton won't go quietly. Men like him never do. He'll fight this in court, and he'll fight dirty. You'll need to testify against him, both of you." He looked at Dakota. "Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," Dakota said without hesitation. That evening, as Eleanor and Dakota walked back to the boarding house with their guard escort, they heard shouting. A crowd was gathering in the town square. Thornton stood on the steps of the courthouse making a speech. "These Apache are lying," he shouted. "They're trying to steal good Christian land. And this woman," he pointed in Eleanor's direction, "she's been brainwashed by savages. She doesn't know what she's saying." Some people in the crowd nodded and agreed, but others looked uncertain. One man called out, "But what about the land records, Thornton? What about the other ranchers you pushed out?" "Lies," Thornton shouted. "All lies from people jealous of my success." Marshal Harrison stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried authority. "Marcus Thornton, you are under arrest for land fraud, violation of federal treaty agreements, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government." Thornton's face went pale, then red with rage. "You can't arrest me. I have rights. And you'll get your day in court," Harrison said. Deputies take him into custody. What happened next was chaos. Thornton's men tried to help him escape. Shots were fired. People screamed and ran. Eleanor felt Dakota pull her behind a building for safety. They heard more gunshots, shouting, and confusion. When the noise finally stopped, they carefully looked out. Thornton was in handcuffs. Several of his men were also being arrested. One deputy was wounded, but not seriously. It was over. The next few weeks were a blur. There was a trial. Eleanor testified about everything she witnessed and documented. Dakota testified about his people's history with the land and Thornton's illegal actions. Other witnesses came forward, including ranchers that Thornton had threatened and cheated. The evidence was overwhelming. Thornton was found guilty on all charges. His lands were seized by the federal government. The territories that belonged to the Apache were officially recognized and protected. Thornton would spend many years in prison. After the trial, Eleanor and Dakota stood outside the courthouse. They had won. Justice had been served. But now they faced a new question. What happened next? You can go back to your people, Eleanor said to Dakota. They're safe now. The land is protected. Yes, Dakota said. But what about you? Where will you go? Eleanor realized she hadn't thought about this. She couldn't go back to Boston. She had no family there. She couldn't go to any normal town because people would always whisper about her, the woman who lived with Indians. I don't know, she admitted. Dakota took her hands in his. They were standing in the middle of the street, but he didn't seem to care who saw. Come back with me, he said. Come back to our camp. Make your life with us. With me. Dakota, I love you, Eleanor, he said. I have loved you since the day I saw you had courage even in your fear. I love your kind heart and your brave spirit. I love how you see people, not just their differences. Come back with me. Be my wife if you'll have me. Eleanor felt tears in her eyes. I love you too, she said. I think I have for a long time. But are you sure? My people already accept you, Dakota said. Grandmother Kaya asks about you every day. The women miss you. The children want you to come back and tell them more stories. You belong with us. You belong with me. Eleanor laughed and cried at the same time. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll come back. Yes, I'll marry you. Dakota smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that changed his whole face. He pulled her close and kissed her right there in the street. Some people stopped and stared. Some looked shocked. But Eleanor didn't care. She had found where she belonged. They returned to the Apache camp a week later. When they arrived, the whole camp came out to greet them. Kaya hugged Eleanor tightly and said many happy words in Apache. The women surrounded her with joy. The children pulled at her dress asking questions. That night there was a celebration. People danced and sang. There was food and laughter. Eleanor sat next to Dakota and watched the joy around her. This was her family now. These were her people. The wedding happened 3 days later in the Apache tradition. It was different from weddings in Boston, but it was beautiful. Eleanor wore a dress that the women made for her, decorated with beautiful beads. Dakota wore his best clothing. They stood before the elders and made promises to each other in both English and Apache. Kaya blessed their union. She said words about 2 rivers joining to make one strong current. She said words about different paths leading to the same destination. Eleanor didn't understand all of it, but she felt the meaning in her heart. Life wasn't always easy after that. They faced many challenges. Some white settlers still hated the Apache and caused trouble. Some Apache were unsure about having a white woman as the wife of their leader. There were hard winters and difficult decisions, but Eleanor and Dakota built a good life together. They had a home at the edge of both worlds. Eleanor started teaching Apache children to read and write in English. She believed education would help them fight future battles with the law and treaties. She taught them about their rights and how to protect themselves legally. Dakota worked with other Apache leaders to maintain peace and protect their lands. He negotiated with the government and kept detailed records of all agreements. Eleanor helped him write letters to officials and keep track of treaties. 2 years after they married, Eleanor gave birth to a son. They named him Samuel after Marshall Harrison, who had helped them, but they also gave him an Apache name, Biminak, which meant son of 2 peoples. Eleanor held her baby and looked at Dakota. She thought about how far she had come. She had been sold to a stranger like property. She had been afraid and helpless. But then an Apache warrior captured her heart and everything changed. What are you thinking? Dakota asked, sitting beside her. I'm thinking about that day in the canyon, Eleanor said. When you found me, I was so scared. I was too, Dakota admitted. I didn't know if I should help you or leave you. But something told me to carry you to safety. I'm glad you listened to that something, Eleanor said with a smile. So am I, Dakota said. He looked at their son, then at Eleanor. So am I. Years passed. Their family grew. They had 2 more children, both healthy and strong. Eleanor became known throughout the territory as a teacher and advocate for Apache rights. She worked with lawyers and government officials to make sure treaties were honored. She wrote articles for Eastern newspapers about the truth of Apache life, trying to change people's minds about them. Dakota remained a respected leader. He was known as a man of peace who was also strong. He protected his people but also found ways to work with fair-minded white settlers. Together, He and Eleanor built bridges between two worlds that had been at war. It wasn't the life Eleanor had imagined when she was a young girl in Boston. It was harder in many ways. There were still people who hated them for being together. There were still fights to fight and injustices to overcome, but it was also better than anything she could have imagined. She had freedom. She had purpose. She had love. She had a family and a community that accepted her completely. On warm evenings, Eleanor and Dakota would sit outside their home and watch the sun set over the land they had fought to protect. Their children would play nearby. Kaya, now very old, would sit with them and tell stories. Do you ever regret it? Dakota asked Eleanor one such evening. Choosing this life? Eleanor looked at him, at their children, at the land she had come to love. She thought about the girl she used to be, scared and helpless in a wagon. She thought about the woman she had become, strong and free. Not for one moment, she said.